But now, what I like now, here's my pros about the schedule. Here's what I like about the schedule. My first like, my first thing that I like about the 2025 about the 2025 NASCAR schedule, the Cup Series going back to the Madhouse, Bowman Gray Stadium. The Clash going to the Madhouse, I think it's going to be a demolition derby. But I think about that. But I think about the Clash going, the Sprint Cup Series returning to the Madhouse. I think it's going to be a demolition derby. Drivers getting angry at each other. Drivers throwing fights, picking fights with each other. Just like what happens in the NASCAR K&N series when they had a race at Bowman Gray Stadium in 2011. Half that race half of that race, at least the majority of that race was run at a yellow. Mostly due to drivers beating and banging each other. That's the reason. How do you explain the reason why Bowman Gray is known as the Met? How do you explain that why Bowman Gray Stadium is known as the Madhouse? You're gonna get old fashioned short track racing at Bowman Gray Stadium. And it's not just the lower series. That's the reason why the lower series has races at Bowman Gray Stadium. Street hobby stocks race there. Late models race there. K&N races there. Even the NASCAR Real Modified Series races at Bowman Gray. That track produces monumental knockout dragout slugfest at the track. Cars, majority of cars having damage or even have a lot of damage. In the late stages in the Madhouse, to come with these 2 laps, the final 2 laps, and the final 5 laps of Martin's, come in the final 5 laps at the Madhouse. I think the Clash. I'm looking forward into the Clash being at the Madhouse. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be. It's going to put. I think it's going to put NASCAR on the map. I think it really is. Bowman Gray Stadium. It's, believe it or not, Bowman Gray Stadium was one of NASCAR's founding tracks, besides North Westboro and Martinsville. Just imagine, just imagine, I can only imagine. I can only imagine Steve Phelps and the owner of Columbus North High School decided to want to have a race. Decided to want to have a car race at the track. At the track around around the Columbus North football field. Just imagine having a NASCAR race Just imagine having a NASCAR race held there. At the track, around the football stadium in Columbus North, or around the football stadium in Madison. But the people in Winston-Salem had the exact same idea, and it worked. From the 1950s to 1974, they had cars race at Bowman Gray Stadium, at a track around a football stadium, known as Bowman Gray Stadium. In the Sprint Cup Series, in the NASCAR Cup Series, has raced there until 1974, and now they're coming back. And now the Sprint Cup Series is coming back to Bowman Gray Stadium for 2025. And what's also really cool about the 2025 schedule is the Chicago Street Race. It's the Chicago Street Race. The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series has been racing at the Chicago Street Course since 2022. Since 2022, as well as the Xfinity Series, they have raced in the streets of Chicago. I think it's really cool. I think having a street race is really cool for them, because so far IndyCar and Formula One were the only motorsports to have street races until 2022. IndyCar races in the street course at Long Beach, California. They races in the street course in Detroit City, in Detroit, Michigan. But NASCAR having the street race in Chicago, I think it's really cool. It might not last. 2025 maybe maybe the track's last deal hosting the Sprint Cup race, which opens the door up for the Iceberg's favorite track, Chicagoland Speedway. The Iceberg wants that track back. I totally agree with the Iceberg, because Chicagoland was its own track. Chicagoland was like the Iceberg's favorite track, and it produces monumental races in there. In the Gen 6 era, all the way up to the Gen 4 era. Just imagine if the way that the Gen 7 car races, the way that the next Gen car performed at tracks like Kansas Speedway, the tracks like Las Vegas Motor Speedway, tracks like Charlotte Motor Speedway, the Oval. I'm talking about the Oval at Charlotte, at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Just imagine if the next Gen car, how well the next Gen car would race at the Chicagoland Speedway if NASCAR decides to go back to Chicagoland, the racetrack in Joliet, Illinois, Chicagoland Speedway, and the Iceberg wants to. I want that track back. The Iceberg wants that track. The Iceberg wants that track back. We need that. We need Chicagoland Speedway back on the schedule. That Chicagoland Speedway has produced monumental racing, especially that fight, especially that dogfight in the last 5 laps, with 5 laps to go of the 2018 race at Chicago. The dogfight between Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson, with over a handful of laps to go. They raced. They fought. They fought like dogs. They raced like dogs, all the way until the end, until the last corner, when Kyle Busch spun out. When Kyle Busch had enough of Kyle Larson on his tail, spinning him out to the race at Chicago. I want that race. I want that back. I want that back. The Iceberg wants that back. Chicagoland Speedway needs to come back to the skip. That track is still open. I think motocross. I think dirt bike racing. I think they do dirt bike racing in the infield of that track. In the travel. In the travel, that track needs to come back. Maybe you just need a Snickers. Yeah, we need the Chicagoland Speedway to go back on the schedule. To come back to the schedule. I don't care if this is for the Xfinity Series or the Truck Series. The Chicagoland Speedway needs to come back to the schedule. And speaking of Rockingham and speaking of the Truck Series and Xfinity Series, North Carolina Speedway, North Carolina Motor Speedway, 2025, for the first time since 2004, Rockingham Speedway, North Carolina Motor Speedway is back on the schedule. The Sprint Cup Series won't be racing there, but the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series are going to have a race at the Rock, North Carolina Speedway, in Easter weekend. The Truck Series is going to have a race at Rockingham. The Xfinity Series is going to have a race at Rockingham. North Carolina Speedway, Rockingham is back on the schedule. It's back on the NASCAR schedule for the first time since the track closed its door in 2004. That track is back. And what I also like about the 2025 schedule is the fall race at Talladega, going further into the playoffs, going into the round of 8. And I think it's the second race of the round of 8, next to where they're finally going to settle the deal for the Final Four in the fall race in Martinsville. I mean, some fans don't like the idea, and some fans don't like the idea of Talladega being the third to the last race of the season. But let that sink in. Let that sink in. The fall race of Talladega. The fall race of Talladega is the Winston 500. The Winston 500 at Talladega. The fall race of Talladega. That race was Dale Earnhardt's. That race is very important. It's a very important race in NASCAR history. The reason why I think the last race of Talladega, the reason why, in my opinion, the last race of Talladega, the fall race of Talladega, the Winston 500, is the most important race in the NASCAR schedule, because it was Dale Earnhardt. It was the final win of the Intimidator. Dale Earnhardt scored his final win at Talladega. His final win of his career before he passed away at Daytona in 2001. Before he died in the 2001 Daytona 500, it was Dale Earnhardt's last win, and he won the Winston 500 the year prior in 1999. Dale Earnhardt, one of my all-time favorite drivers. Dale Earnhardt. He was the king of restrictor plate tracks. He won everything at Daytona. Finally achieved his dream of winning the Daytona 500 after 20 tries in 1998. Dale Earnhardt has 10 wins at Talladega. His son, Dale Earnhardt Jr. The reason why the last race at Talladega, the fall race at Talladega, the Winston 500, is the most important race in the NASCAR schedule. Dale Earnhardt scored his final win in the Winston 500 at Talladega, in the fall race at Talladega. His son, Dale Earnhardt Jr., scored his first win at Talladega, in that same race that his father scored his last win at Talladega. Dale Earnhardt Jr. scored his first win at Talladega, and that begun Dale Jr.'s Talladega dominance, because he would win the next two races at Talladega in 2002. He won the 2002 Ernest 499, and he won the 2002 EA Sports 500, the same race. Dale Earnhardt Jr. won, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. 2004, winning the same race that his father won. The same race that he won in 2002 and 2001. That's the reason why Talladega Super Speedway, that track is a Dale Earnhardt track. That track is Earnhardt Nation. That track screams Dale Earnhardt. That track screams Dale Earnhardt Jr. A lot of Earnhardt fans love going to Talladega. They love that track, because Dale Earnhardt and Dale Earnhardt Jr. scored the most wins at Talladega. Dale Earnhardt Sr. scored 10 wins at Talladega. Dale Earnhardt Jr. scored 6 wins at Talladega. That is 16 wins combined. Dale Earnhardt and Dale Earnhardt Jr. 16 wins combined at Talladega. The most wins of any other driver at that one track. Dale Earnhardt and Dale Earnhardt Sr. 16 wins combined at Talladega. Jeff Gordon scored 6 wins at Talladega. Jeff Gordon swept to 2007. Jeff Gordon swept Talladega in the 2007 season. Jeff has 6 wins in that track. Michael Waltrip, out of all people, out of all drivers, raced for the same team as Dale Earnhardt Jr. Raced for the same team his father, Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s father, created. Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, DEI. Michael Waltrip scored a win with that team in the 2003 fall race at Talladega. That track is Earnhardt. That track is Earnhardt track. That track is Dale Earnhardt. That track is Dale Earnhardt Jr. Davey Allison, the Allison family. The Allison family had history at Talladega. That's the reason why the backstretch is known as the Alabama Gain Super Stretch. because of the Allison family. Allison family originated there.